Hi, welcome. In this video, this is part two of my breakdown by way of a special request to take a look at uh, a, um, a trainer who follows a path of a type of intervention in terms of a power play. And again, talking about a process in terms of, again, talk about the core ingredients, influence and control, how they come in to a intentional interaction based method, which speaks the right language in terms of changing the perceptions of a dog. Now here again, I skipped ahead on this video here for part two by way of the dog owner about to start to interact with her dog, with her Malinois. And here again, the trainer again continuing to discuss his approach. Again, in the first video, again I talk about why everything matters. I talk about the importance of a intentional interaction-based method, especially again consider when you're dealing with reversing course with a what I call defined as a 1% dogs that have a very high level of social need, high drive. In this case here, a Malinois, to begin to affect change. And again, this is where again I talk about this depth of relationship. Talk about the type of kind of emotional connection that comes through the relationship. Why that can spell tremendous problems and trouble for those who don't are not aware, or that type of connection isn't reconciled properly by way of not just the overall idea of leadership, but the core ingredients I talk about expressed through a intentional interaction based method. That's really important from the get-go, because here's the thing: once you get to this point of the relationship where you're like several months in or a year in, it becomes very challenging to back out that way, to reverse. So this is where I talk about the importance of a method that's going to bring in those core ingredients and align properly at the right level, the right way. This matters. Understand this is really important, because otherwise, and the problem here, and this is the problem by way of again of the issue about control, appearances, certain moments. I even bring that up on the dog daddy. You see the dog daddy petting on the dog like 2 minutes into power playing it. He starts to connect that way, and it offers up a false picture of change. Certain moments are like, oh, the dog looks fantastic in that moment. My response is, don't be deceived. Okay, understand that the dog, through the relationship over time, has become empowered, and so a dog can look balanced even as the dog's gaining a incredible amount of control in the relationship. This is the deceptive nature of the relationship. Again, that's why I talk about the parent example of how a selfish child can look well behaved, right? Most of the days they're playing their video games and doing what they want to do. But ask yourself the question: when is truth revealed to the relationship? Well, it's when when parental influence is part of the of the dynamic, part of the interaction. It's like pick up your toys because not because you're going to get something in return, because I'm the parent. You're not going to express it that way, but just do it. It's a reasonable demand. You're not doing it because you're being abusive. You're doing it because you're reconciling the roles in the relationship. Okay, it's a social type of contract. Now here, the reason I'm saying that is that through this video, you see the trainer here. There's moments where you see the loose leash at times. You're seeing him pay attention. He's stepping in towards the dog. There's all these moments that all add up. Okay, because understand that all this will transfer over to the owner. When that dog goes back into the home environment, into the dog's comfort zone, all those things are going to she's going to adopt the methodology of the trainer. People have to understand that. So to generate what needs to be generated, it's like a tachometer moving over, to get that dial moved over. all those things add up. That they matter, especially again when you're dealing with. I always consider the 1 percentile dog. It becomes entrenched, and then this is where things have to hold together. Okay, I talk about the integrity, of a method, structure through the crate, through the interactions. They all have to, line up, and then even in terms of what that represents, in terms of how long, depends on. Okay, all those things to factor in. You have to consider, the the level that you're dealing with in terms of to talk about the social need of the dog. So, and again, I mentioned in the last video, consider this whole thing about the touch in the head part, right? Ask yourself the question, what does that represent typically? That's a point of connection, emotion, right? So this dog's got to that level where it's just causing that type of ignition, okay, that type of setting this dog into challenge. But again, I talk about the permissive parenting example. Who's the last person to get trampled? It's going to escalate to that point of even the permissive enabling parents going to be disrespected. So this is the things to think about. This trainer's focusing on touching the dog, top of the dog's head. I say don't worry about that. Don't even go there. It's because that's the point of connection with that owner. Why do you think that's happening in the first place? So you want to focus in on I talk about the one-step method, but we'll focus in on intercepting this dog's state of mind. This dog is investing, fixating on different supply sources. Start to key up on that. This whole thing about touching the dog's top of the head, I wouldn't even go there for a period of time. Because that's a connection issue. Okay, that's related to this whole thing about emotions. And go watch the video I did on the Christopher Frey's balanced dog trainer video. He's sitting down on the floor and his hands are moving on the dog. Okay, that's a really good example of what I'm talking about in terms of connection, and again how that what's been already established through the relationship, through association. Okay, how that'll trigger off. So clarity is one of the big themes. That's neat, especially when you deal with dogs at this level. It's got to be clear. You got to bring that clarity into into the process. Okay, that's important. But if you understand you have lack of clarity, it can still be a problem because through lack of clarity, say certain moments you're touching, just like the dog day, petting on the dog. Certain moments that he's showcasing, the dog, you're petting on the dog in the wrong moments. But if you pay attention right after that, the dog starts to flame up again, right? It goes into high challenge, right? You can see the lack of clarity or certain moments, what they generate. So I'm saying this all to say that everything matters. Okay, this is getting into the actual method, what it represents. So here I'm going to continue to play this, stop along the way, because again, this is getting into the kind of the nitty gritty of what I'm talking about in terms of just why it is that everything has meaning, everything matters, the method matters. And so this is why when I come alongside a method, if I understand, how these moments add up, I cannot come alongside certain methodologies. Now people can take that any way they want. They'll say, oh, Dale's saying he's, the best in the world and all this stuff. People can interpret it any way they want, but the thing is, no, I show it. Okay, I talk about it, dealing with, when you deal with these type of dogs. That's why these trainers, and I profile them, I flip on the script series, trainers getting blindsided, certain moment, right? They're assuming that things are going along a certain way, and they're not. Okay, because it's got to be a power play. It's got to take a power play level. But what that means in terms of, the core ingredients, they have to align. Through the leash has to be, that baseline needs to be there, because the cards have to be exposed. Okay, you got to expose those, the cards that are being held. Okay, you got to expose those cards. Really important.
Time to fight, and then basically we're fixing everything as it goes. All right. How many times have I told him he's a horrible dog?
0.
How many times did I tell him good for being good? What did I do with him? Do you know? I pressed the button 4.5 times if he did this. I spun in a circle and then did up, down, left, right.
So again, talk about stop it here, because talk about that remote collar. Okay, understand that I've talked about in that last video why you do not want to use it as a primary pivot point. Okay, trainers will do that. Okay, but you want to align with and get that owner dialed into what influence is actually doing. Okay, and I talk about the importance of certain moments. Just as the dog's investing, the nudge is happening. You're In fact, you're changing even the amount of influence happening in certain moments. Like in the moment, you're making changes depending on that expressed state. So it has to be. It's got to correspond. It has to make. You're making like mid second adjustments. You can't make the adjustments that way with the remote collar. Okay, it's just you can't do it. So, but you want to be able to dial in the way I described because that matters. Okay, because it's about speaking the right language. Okay, it's intercepting certain moments. That stinking thinking I talk about. So a remote collar isn't conducive to doing that. Okay, so I'll use a remote collar as a secondary tool for the crate, right? But you won't see me using the remote collar as a primary tool that way.
Right, A, B, start. Right, you know what that is? I don't either. So there is no pattern or reason or rhyme. We're fixing things in the moment, okay? So you ready?
Yes.
All right, so now what we're gonna do, Erin, would you do me a favor? Would you record for her? We're gonna keep it going, okay? All right, so we're changing him from reacting all the time to everything. All right, so he's explosive. Somebody comes in the door, like you said, you could get him to sit with the leash until I started moving. Once I started to move, you're like, I'm not gonna be able to do that.
Yeah.
So doing anything with him under any other circumstances other than what causes problems is an absolute waste of time, right? And so once we get things, we start piling on. Piling on was asking for more things, starting to make him turn, dropping the leash and getting the same performance, putting him on different objects, dragging the chair to cause him to break the behaviors that we were building a minute ago, opening doors and running, opening doors and talking.
So here, talk about, trying to kind of trigger off certain moments. But one of the things to consider, think about is like when you're dialed in at the right level, I talk about the stinking thinking. Just the first part of the video, you see how he's moving around. And this dog was really invested, really fixating, really expressing, controls, manifesting. Those are the moments that start to be nudging, right, and turn completely opposite as you're starting to intercept that state of mind. So, getting into this thing about this level of stinking thing where a look just isn't a look. Okay, a dog is engaged in that. So being dialed in at that level. So you don't have to go to the issue about trying to trigger off certain things. They're going to trigger off anyway, but really get dialed into starting to intercept those moments. And you'll see that the tangible thing to look for is the head will turn in towards, inwards, as you're nudging, and people ask, well, how much should you be nudging and intercepting? Well, quite a bit. And people look at it, well, nagging the dog. No, trust me, these dogs, like, they have a whole different way of thinking. When they get to this level, this is why they're exploding. They've bitten people. Okay, they're like, the control levels are far up on the dog in terms of that expressed state. Their mind is just like a selfish child. You can deal with a very, very selfish child. Their thinking isn't healthy. Okay, they go into anywhere and their thought process is immediately all about them. Okay, it's like totally self-absorbed, and that's what starts to happen. So you have to start to dial into that. You have to start to intercept those moments. But the dog's gonna be more agreeable because people will think, well, it's going to cause more conflict. Well, no, actually the opposite. You're proactive and you're nudging just prior to you engage in that stinking thing. The dog understands what you're doing because you're already power playing it anyway. And so, but you're not doing it when because that dog will release. That dog will start to relax. And you're keeping a little bit of tension through the leash, a little bit of baseline going. But, the dog understands because when the dog gives, you give. Understand there's that type of tension there in the relationship where, it's not just about, because if you just kept that leash tight a certain way or you're really, cranking on that dog certain moments, you're going to ignite and create more conflict. Okay. It has to make sense. When you're dialed in the right way, it makes sense to the dog. Understand because people don't understand because they look at certain methods and typically when they're auditing or looking at something different, they're so sold out to this bribery-based idea of things, it's hard for them to think any other way. See, that's part of the problem.
So by the end of the week, how far could this dog be if we did this every day?
I think pretty far.
Unbelievably far.
With you, yeah.
Right? But with you too, because we're going to change the way you do things. So you already know you're going to have a lot of bad habits, right? When you come in here, right?
Yep.
Okay, so everybody does. Anytime we start something new, every person who starts something new, what do they go through? The difficulty of change, right? And in the process of that, they spend more time beating themselves up than just staying on track. So we already know you're going to make mistakes. The only thing I don't want you to do is focus on the mistakes. Just listen to me, my Barry White voice, okay?
Okay.
And then we'll walk you through it, okay? All right, go ahead and come over here.
On your right side?
It don't matter. There is no rules. All right.
So I thought, well, there is no rule, whatever. Now here, this is where I talk about this is transfer over. Okay, this is about, you're not going from, one individual to another. It's important that the integrity of this, okay, the core ingredients, influence and control. You should be putting this dog, pushing this dog, guiding, pushing this dog into a sit position. There should be tension here to line this up. It's like, okay, the dog's going over to somebody else. But in terms of the core ingredients, influence and control, right? That's how this should be happening.
All right. So first thing you're going to do is just take this leash, all right? And what I want you to do now is just start walking backwards.
And see right here, so leash is loose. Okay, so I talk about the, like you'll see how I line up to the called the one-step method. Okay, very intentional. Okay, the core ingredients are coming together. Okay, it's like getting dialed into the relationship. Here it's just transferring over. The muzzle's on this dog. Muzzle, of course, is a good thing. Muzzle represents control. So dog accepting the muzzle, okay, dog should accept the muzzle for a period of time. Muzzle will go away over time. But here, just take because here this is about movement and stuff, but it needs to be about, the core ingredients. It has to maintain a type of power play dynamic. Okay, understand that's what needs to be the focus.
Yep. Stop right there. You don't need to say anything to him.
Don't need to say anything. So the dog is going into the sit on his own. Okay. It's important that it's like, I call it like a wave cresting another wave. The dog starts to go into the sit. You should be pushing, so the dog feels you that way. Control. You're guiding. The dog needs to feel you that way. Control. Not happening here.
Okay. So that's the best thing we can do is take away all your talking, just so it can be very clear for the dog. All right. So we're going to start walking backwards again. Go ahead. Good. Stop right there. Now, when he goes to your side, I want you to spin. You're going to stay in the same spot. I want you to spin and face him. You're going to stay in the same spot. That's the hard part. See how she just shifted twice? Everybody does it.
Pivot.
That's it. You're just going to.
But see, all this thing about movement, okay, understand that, when you're moving, it should be about forwardness. It should be about generating, okay, influence and control of the dog. Okay, when your movements matter, okay, so it needs to be intentional. As I said, there's no wasted motion, okay? And in fact, that's why I talk about, if you're moving towards a dog at any certain, you see as trainers doing that before, start moving into the dog, everything needs to funnel, okay? This is about funneling. This is about making sense to the dog. This is about being intentional. This is about those control and influence are part of that. That's what's being generated through how everything funnels. So it needs to happen that way. That dog needs to feel you that way. Okay, that's important here. That's lost in a lot of this, okay?
Pivot and spin, okay? Start walking backwards again. Good. Stop right there. Perfect. Put your hand on top of his head and hold it there. Just put it on his head.
See, and there we get into this whole head craziness, okay? Okay? I mean, like as I mentioned before, her big, and you always have to challenge this stuff because it's like saying, when people walk in and say, what's the deal here? Like the dog owners, this head, I'd say, well, that's a connection point. This dog's gained an incredible amount of control in the relationship. And so that's a point of petting and emotional contact with the dog. But I would not be focusing on, let's get that reestablished. I mean, why? The trainers look at this a while because that's a trigger point. Well, I understand it's a trigger point, but, I recognize why it's a trigger point, but the trainer's looking at this somehow differently. It's a trigger point because it's an emotional point of contact. And we need in fact, for the owner, that's not healthy to even be doing. Say, no, don't touch the dog. Don't even put your hand on the dog's head. Get this dog, get that leash tight enough, get that dog in next to you, pushing on the dog. You see, if you watch my videos, you see how I'm doing it.
His head and hold it. Very good. So the one thing we've already got.
Because here the problem is, because understand that, and this is the problem. Think about what I'm saying here. This dog seems calmer right now. She's got this hand on the top of the dog's head. Ask yourself the question: what has been established through the relationship over a period of time with this owner this way? What does that represent through association, emotion? Just like the dog daddy situation. Go watch his videos when he starts to pet on the dog in a certain power play situation. That dog, because it's like you're offering up the past and say, okay, so this dog could be very calm right here, right? In this moment, it's like, oh, great, because this is empowerment. Not enough time's gone by here to change this anyway. So this is the deceptive nature of thing. And then again, you start adding everything else on here I'm talking about. Problem, okay? Because I would be like, looking at this thinking, okay, I'm rebuilding this type of connection. What's going to happen is this owner goes back into the home environment here, gets back to wanting to connect this way with the dog. Like, think about it.
Got changed right off the bat is the fact that a minute ago, and it may come out, like you saw where he would respond to me touching the muzzle, and then he would stop. And then he would go back to it like a few minutes later. In this scenario, we have the same thing. I couldn't even come up to her. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything. He would be at the end of the leash, exploding, going crazy.
Exploding, going crazy, because this takes on a different dynamic for him. Okay, I understand that, because he's more, power, more, the relationship isn't established that way through that type of connection with like she has with the dog. So this dog's gonna create more of a contrast. Okay, through that type of connecting that way. So it's gonna flame up higher. Here the dog's settling in more because it's like, oh, great.
So that's already an exact change right away. Okay, this is another change too, is him just sitting there stationary.
So, but the question I have to ask, is this a good change? Like, consider what I'm saying. Like, this is the problem with appearances. Okay, this is the cautionary tale here. It's about relationship. Okay, it's about what's emotion, connection, right? A dog can look very balanced at times while they're in full control.
With his head up on her in a sit position. Okay, so now what I want you to do is the same thing. You're going to walk backwards, but I want you to walk backwards that direction. Walk backwards that direction.
Just turn and walk?
You're going to walk backwards that direction. Yep, so spin your back that direction. Good. Perfect right there. Turn your back to me. Start walking. Very good. Stop right.
Because what happened here, because of that point of contact, and this is how things switch over, that dog's tail's, wagging and stuff going on. The dog's saying, oh, well, this is great. Now I get some hope here that, the emotional, so this dog is going to eat this up. So actually respond better, okay, right after that point of contact that way.
Right there, wherever he lands.
Because this ain't power playing it, okay? This, the corner, how I'm talking about how the leash with the tension, okay, with guiding, with, bringing that dog into the push-pull method. No cards are being exposed here. And then that just happened there.
Let's face him. Perfect.
The dog sits on free will. The dog sits on their own, okay?
Nice. So the other thing we're teaching is that when I move, you move. When I stop, you stop. Put your hand on top of his head again. Perfect.
See that? And the dog like leans up, right? That's the emotion connection again. So all this, I'll stop it here. These are things that we talk about a deceptive picture. Okay, be very aware. Like I talk about the reveal. Okay, think about the parent-child example. What's revealed or not revealed, right? But the relationship itself, what's been established through the relationship with this owner. I expect that this is, again, there's some dogs. This is the problem. You get into these certain dogs. You can't have that type of emotion going on in the relationship, without it generating a massive problem, and people get blindsided. But here, this should be cut out, because right here for this dog, and this is the problem, is it can switch out as dog and movement, because there's no any. Ask yourself the question: where's the aspects of influence and control happening through this interaction? There isn't any. Okay, this dog's moving around, so because again, you start to generate that. The dog starts to go into challenge again. We'll watch a little bit more of this.
Perfect. Okay, so we're getting him to bring his head up by putting our hands where? above his head. So if I want the dog to go higher, me telling him in a verbal communication that he knows nothing about because we think he understands, absolutely does nothing. Me taking my body to a particular part where I want him to come to is more powerful than anything, more powerful than food, more powerful than a ball, more powerful than anything. Actions speak louder than, and talk is what?
Cheap.
So for us to stand here and talk to him and tell him he's bad, or us to...
So here, again, we talk about motivation. That's the thing. I talk about, this is the thing about trainers will use treats, use things to motivate a response. But here's the issue here, is the motivator itself, even in the context here, control itself by default within the relationship becomes its own motivating agent. Okay, just like why a selfish child goes to a certain parent because they get what they want. So it's like touching this way kind of reactivates that. Okay, be very, and talk about the issue about response. So, and free will, right? Those core ingredients, the dog needs to feel that you're asserting control in a way that's intentional, but the dog understands intent. Intent was one of the big themes here I talk about. But here, this is the problem. This is the whole thing about within the framework of response. Look at this, say, oh, it's good. The dog, no. I'd be looking at this saying, no, don't, no. This ain't good. Okay, this ain't good because how do you know? Because of the history of this dog. Okay, and this dog's reaction to that point of contact. And now, because here it's like, and what can happen is your power playing it initially at a certain level, and then it goes to this, and okay, the dog's responding, because it'll motivate the dog based on control. And then you'll be thinking that you get a great picture going on here, and you don't. All right, because the only way to do a proper assessment of the relationship of a dog is through those core ingredients coming in the way I described. That's the only way. And then for change to happen, those have to stay intact. They have to hold together. That's not happening here at all. And then when you see something like this, and then this dog's moving around, very suspect. Right, because it's like, okay, because those core ingredients, they're not there that way in this whole interaction at all. And but think about this whole thing, because when you look at how big a deal they're making about the head stuff, well, right away that tells me something. That's a point of contention, because that's a connection point through emotion, right? I mean, that's just the way it is, and that empowers the dog, especially once you based on the current state of the relationship. The level of stinking thinking going on. So again, hopefully this video, these couple of videos help people think a little bit more about, a process. You deal, because you'll see outcomes here. Again, don't be deceived. We talk about suddenly things happen, people get blindsided. Oh, dog goes home, something bad still, kaboom. It's like, oh, well, I guess there was something wrong with the dog. See, that's how the stuff goes down. No. Especially when you deal with dogs that are at this level, the 1 percentile dogs, it matters. Okay, the methodology, everything has to come together and hold together over a certain period of time. You have to shut down that emotional connection period. That's gonna be shut down, because it's about depth of relationship, that bond. It's not about petting and emotion and touch that way. It's about relationship. It's about being in harmony in nature that way. But here, a little bit of emotion equals big trouble for certain dogs. Thanks for watching.